Would you please tell me more about your academic and educational background, please?
From the beginning,
Yes.
well, of course, I graduated from Burbank High School with 4 years of math, a year of physics, a year of chemistry. I went to USC as a civil engineer. I spent 1 year, but because of the fraternities, I got a C plus average, and my draft board said you had to have a B average or you were going to be drafted. So I joined the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard sent me to the Navy Aviation Electronics School. And I was there, and because it was the Korean War had just stopped, and the Coast Guard had to cut back financially. Uh, they said, "Would you like to leave?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd like to go back to college." So after a year, they let me out, and I came back to Los Angeles, and I went to work for the telephone company. And from the telephone company, I spent 3 months, and then I went out and interviewed at Atomics International, and Jim Owens hired me as a junior engineer based on my year of college plus my electronics background. And I worked there as a junior engineer for 3.5 years. And in that time, I worked first wiring up the electronics for the operation of the reactor. Then I was responsible to maintain the electronics on the shift when the reactor was running full power and making electricity for the grid network. And then when they brought in an experimental group to do various tests of the reactor, I was moved to the experimental group. And I stayed there until December of '59, at which earlier than December I was asked if I'd like to come down and do the same sort of thing for the new research reactor that was being built at UCLA. And Jim advised me that for my own personal career and to be able to finish my education, I should go to UCLA, which I did. At UCLA, I was the assistant supervisor of the reactor for 3 years, and then the supervisor resigned, and I became supervisor of the reactor. And I spent my next, from that point on, another 18 years at UCLA as supervisor of that reactor. And in that period of time, I got my master's degree in medical physics. I got a degree from West Coast in management science. I became a certified health physicist because I was doing a lot of the health physics around the reactor and the engineering school. I became a registered professional nuclear engineer with the state of California based on the fact that I had my senior reactor operator's license, and have probably achieved the critical or chain reaction or supervised the chain reaction 5,000 or more times. So I'm quite familiar with this part of the program. I taught classes at UCLA. I have a record of the classes that I taught there. And from there I went on, I became the radiation safety officer for the entire school before I left. And from there I moved to by then the Atomic Energy Commission had become the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. I went to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and I went through their 10 weeks of school for power reactors. And after 2 years, I moved for advancement, I moved to State Agreements Officer, which is kind of a big brother to the states that have signed an agreement with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to regulate their own radioactive materials. And my states that I was over as their big brother or representative was Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada, and Arizona. And I did that for the rest of my career, retiring in 1998.
And what types of things did you do relative to reactors in this role?
The states do not regulate the reactors. In that role, it was radioactive materials that are used by industry, used by medicine, used in universities, also over low-level waste sites, uranium mills, uranium mines, and that sort of thing.
For example, you told me you had been at the San Onofre nuclear generating station.
Yes.
What was your role at that generating station?
I was the NRC inspector. And for a period of time, I was also the on-site reactor inspector for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission.